Hi everyone, I'm Jocelyn, and I am grateful you're here. You're listening to the Starting with Gratitude podcast. This is a safe space intended to host meaningful conversations exploring all topics of the human experience. Every conversation starts with gratitude and remains rooted in gratitude. After you listen, make sure to join the community by subscribing and sharing. I am so happy you have joined us. Hello, my beautiful people, my listeners, my viewers. It's your girl, your host of this Starting with Gratitude podcast, Jocelyn. And today is a little different. It's still very much much so special, even without the special guest. It's just me today on this episode. And there are a few podcast updates that I want to fill you all in on. This podcast dropped at the beginning of this year. And so I personally still consider it to be fairly new. Up until a couple of weeks ago, I have been dropping an episode every single week with an amazing guest of mine. And I have been updating you all in the season 1 and season 2 season recaps, where I just kind of tell you some of the lessons that I've learned along the way of, starting this new podcast and venturing on this new journey that I've wanted to pursue and invest in for so long. And I'm honestly so happy that I've brought this podcast to life, and that this concept and idea of starting with gratitude came to me because it really does call to me and my soul and my spirit and what I believe in and how I choose to navigate this life. And for those of you who have been considering starting a podcast or have been wanting to start a podcast for a long time, I'm going to be your cheerleader over here and let you know that I very much so encourage you to go and do that thing, or whatever it is that has been weighing on your heart and been coming up repeatedly on your mind, to pursue something that's been calling to you. I am a firm believer that the things that call to us, especially when the vision is clear, when the idea is clear, it's not necessarily just a figment of our imagination or just, a thought to dismiss. It's very much so often a sign. It is a signal. It is a guide. It is what many of us pray for when we are seeking a life change, when we are seeking abundance. It is, when we are most authentic with ourselves, when we are most aligned. And we will only be our most authentic self when we are pursuing the things that we love and that we are passionate about. So go and do that thing, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Share your journey along the way, just like I am with you. And so I do want to update you all on a few things regarding this podcast. Nothing crazy. I'm not going anywhere. A couple of weeks ago, I think I didn't drop an episode. And last week, I also didn't drop an episode. And the reason, the main reason, and perhaps the only reason why that is because I didn't have a guest to bring to you all, to present to you all. And, even along the way, as I was doing these seasons, the first season I featured all women on my podcast. On the second season, I featured all men on my podcast. And that honestly, at the beginning, wasn't necessarily intentional. I never really want to segregate genders or people in that way. My intention with these seasons initially was to the first season, I have all creatives. And the second season, I have people in the music industry. In the third season, I feature all chefs. And, more so by industry and creative field, and you know, whatever area of life or topic that is. That's kind of like the idea that I had behind seasons. But as these episodes and seasons progressed, when I was moving on to season 2, there was a few women who like I really, really wanted to interview, and they weren't available until I was no longer in season 1. And so I had to kind of, let them go. And same thing happened with season 2. There were some men who like I really wanted to feature, but in season 3, I had planned to only feature folks who are in the spiritual space and the wellness space. And so I had to turn some of them down and tell them, I'd be circling back with them whenever the time was right. And I didn't like that. Like I felt like it constrained me, and it constrained this podcast, and these people that I turned down are really amazing. And I could have just gone ahead and recorded with them and then just kind of saved it in my back pocket and published it whenever they suited the season. But I want these conversations that I drop to be fairly recent. I don't want months to go by because, things change, life changes, people changes. And I want my guests to feel like what we drop is still relevant to them and their lives. So with that said, I am parting ways with having seasons, at least for now, at least for the rest of this year, because I do just want the freedom to just feature, whoever it is that is available and that I feel called to share with you. And without having to worry about like, can I actually feature them in this season or not? So no more seasons over here. They may make a comeback once this podcast is bigger, but we'll see. So I'm actually really excited about that. And there's one more change on the topic of, freedom and not feeling constrained and wanting to remain consistent with this podcast and drop an episode every single week. I may not be featuring a special guest every single week anymore because I really want to remain consistent with this podcast and drop an episode every single week. And sometimes, people have to reschedule. So it's like, I have to work around not only my schedule, but other people's schedules. I also have like a lot of construction going on here in my neighborhood. So I'm only recording these episodes at 10 a.m. because that's when the construction workers go on break for an hour. So, it's like all these little details. So on the weeks where I am not featuring a special guest, I am just going to be coming on here myself. I'm going to be expressing my own gratitude. We're going to continue starting with gratitude. I'll be expressing what it is that I feel grateful for in this moment in time and in this season of my life, and kind of be diving into a topic myself that I feel kind of called to expand on, to speak on. And these episodes won't be an hour long. They'll be a little shorter. So I kind of like that I'll also be offering, shorter content, longer form content, and kind of provide a little more diversity for you all. And, these episodes with myself will kind of give you the opportunity to get to know me as your host a little more as well. And I look forward to it. I just didn't want to just go ahead and jump into these changes without letting you all know. So now you are all caught up. You're all up to date with what is going on with this podcast. I'm going to go ahead and just express what it is that I feel grateful for right now in this moment in time, and briefly touch on why I just love and value and appreciate and emphasize gratitude so much. So I'm so grateful, to just have the ability to create. Us who create and bring things to life, like we're literally making something out of nothing. And we are having these thoughts and ideas in our minds and giving them life and manifesting them into physical form and sharing them with the world. And then others get to experience that. That's just such a beautiful process that I'm so grateful to experience and so grateful to allow myself to experience. We all have the ability to bring ideas to life, to manifest dreams, but not everyone allows themselves to. So I'm so grateful that I invest in myself and I love myself and I gift myself the opportunity to experience manifestation, intentional manifestation, because we're all manifesting always. We're all manifestors, whether we're doing it consciously or subconsciously. And I think the manifestation that we're all striving to encompass and embody is intentional manifestation. And I'm really grateful for that, for my awareness, for my conscious awareness. I'm so grateful to continuously be evolving and changing and learning new things and really investing in my growth, really investing in my growth and allowing myself to transform. I feel like this is something that kind of came up for me recently that I've been reflecting on is, so many of us change. Change is inevitable, but transformation is a choice. And I'm so grateful that I choose to transform whenever it is that I feel called. I'm so grateful to experience this life. So grateful to experience this life the way that I do with the awareness that I do. Because I feel like my awareness allows me to experience this life in a very beautiful, miraculous way, a very enlightening way. I can go on and on and on, y'all, about the things that I feel grateful for. I'm just so grateful to be here, so grateful to be creating, so grateful to be sharing what it is that I love with you all, and so grateful that you all are, receiving. I'm really grateful for those who receive because, a lot of the things that I create with the intention to give and to share. And so for those of you who receive it, you are an affirmation for me. And I'm really, really grateful for that. There's this quote that says, "When life is sweet, say thank you and celebrate. When life is bitter, say thank you and grow." And that is a quote by Shauna Niequist. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that quote sheds light on one of the many reasons why I love and appreciate and value gratitude so much, is because there's literally always something to be grateful for. And because there's always something to be grateful for, gratitude is accessible at all times. Gratitude has this accessibility that perhaps some other emotions may not as easily have. I do feel like joy is always accessible. I do feel like other high vibrational emotions are always accessible. I think we just have to reach a certain level of conscious awareness to be able to tap into, for example, bliss at any given time. But gratitude, I feel like, is something that is easier for us to tap into. And I know that gratitude still doesn't come easy for a lot of us. But my hopes with my work and the things that I create and share is that you learn, you learn how to be able to tap into the feeling tone of gratefulness at any given time in any season of your life. And, I feel like a lot of people, when they think of gratitude and utilizing gratitude as a tool, it's become popular to utilize gratitude as a tool for manifestation. And I do very much so believe in that. But for me, what's made gratitude so special is that it's been a tool for alchemy. It's been a tool for alchemization. I can turn any experience that may be difficult or challenging or even traumatic, and gratitude allows me to transform that difficult, challenging, traumatic experience into one that doesn't diminish my light, into one that in turn actually expands it. Whenever I find myself in a season of life that feels a little dense, I know that gratitude is always there. And, you know, the thing about gratitude is that even if you don't feel it, it doesn't mean that it's not there. Just because you may not feel grateful, it doesn't mean that you don't have something to be grateful for. And that is a fact that I firmly believe in. And I want to awaken as many people as possible to that fact. Is that at any given time in any season of your life, there is something for you to be grateful for. And a constant, a given, a simplicity that we all have to be grateful for is our breath, you know, our bodies that keep us alive, that gift us the opportunity to continue experiencing this life. And there's many different ways that you can arrive to gratitude. One of the ways is, you know, whenever you find yourself again in a difficult or challenging situation, is asking yourself, what is the lesson for me here? You know, instead of, you know, resorting to becoming the victim or victimizing yourself or feeling sorry for yourself or reacting in a way that, you know, doesn't serve you, ask yourself, what is the lesson available to me here? And that lesson that is trying to make itself known to you in that experience, in that moment, is the very thing to feel grateful for. And that's another thing that I firmly believe in, is there's always a lesson in everything. There's always a lesson in everything. And something that I recently kind of came to the realization to is a personal belief that I'm still kind of expanding on, but I'm starting to believe that learning your lessons may be the most important thing in life. Because when you first of all ask yourself, what is the lesson in this for me? What is the gift in this for me? You are immediately alchemizing darkness into light, shadow into light. When you are reflecting on and asking yourself, what's the lesson? And two, when we actually invest in acknowledging and exploring the lessons, and we learn them, like actually learn them and move forward in life with that lesson learned, we are no longer repeating a cycle. We are stepping into a new cycle. You know, a lot of the reasons, or perhaps maybe even the main reason why we find ourselves in a repeated cycle in life, is because we haven't learned the lesson that is trying to make itself known to us in that cycle. And we can't advance to certain levels in life until we've learned a certain lesson. Like, imagine if, you know, you didn't learn your addition and subtraction, and you go straight into calculus. You know, how will that experience be? These lessons are gifts, these lessons that are intentionally, progressively assisting us from one level to the next is always something to be grateful for, something to acknowledge, something that is always occurring in our lives. And I can go on and on when it comes to learning lessons and cycles and how that ties into transformation and change and all of that stuff. But I want to stick on the topic of gratitude for now and not make this a super long episode. But yeah, like y'all, gratitude is always accessible to us. There's always something to be grateful for. And when you really, really strengthen that muscle, that ability to be grateful, it really is like a superpower. So that is why I love gratitude. That is why I'm so grateful for gratitude itself. And so grateful that, I have the relationship with gratitude that I have. And writing it down every single day for the past few years has really, really transformed my life, has impacted the foundation of my life. It has strengthened it in many beautiful ways. And having my guests write down what they feel grateful for prior to our call and sharing it with us in the beginning of our conversation, in the beginning of the episode, is something that I just love so much about the concept of this podcast. So that's all I'm going to say for now. I hope you found a little gem here and there in what I had to say about gratitude, and my thoughts and feelings in regards to gratitude. Thank you so much for tuning in, for listening. I feel slightly relieved, like catching you guys all up on, the updates of this podcast and what's going on. I just really want to make this podcast consistent and remain consistent regardless of whether or not there is a guest to feature. And so here we are. You'll expect more conversations from me directly. We'll dive into personal topics, life topics, spiritual topics, all of that good stuff. I'm going to try to, make these episodes with me feel like a pep talk, like an encouraging, like real talk. So I look forward to that. And I look forward to our future guests that are so amazing and the future growth and continued consistent growth of this podcast. Make sure to share this podcast with your loved ones. Please, 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 if you are listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, leave a review. Reviews are so, so helpful. And that is something that I need to emphasize more. Podcast reviews really do make a difference. So if you've been listening to this podcast on Apple, please go ahead and find your way to the reviews and leave a review, share your thoughts and feelings on this podcast there. And I'll see you in the next episode. Again, these episodes are available on YouTube. So if you want to watch, then go ahead and head on over there. And I will see you next week for another episode of Starting with Gratitude. Peace and blessings to you all. Stay grateful, and I'll talk to you very soon.